Here's a fun experiment I like to do. You take a big figure from the past, dig into what they actually believed, and ask yourself what they would think about modern America. With how divided the country is now, it's a fun little game, and this time is George Washington. You're already familiar with this guy, but no one talks about his actual policies, like his immigration stance. His views were surprisingly progressive on the topic, but definitely not in the way that you'd expect. What do I mean by this? So, although George Washington never affiliated himself with a political party and famously warned against political parties, many of his stances aligned with the Federalists of the time, and his immigration take was not much different from theirs. By today's standards, Washington would have been a staunch conservative. There's much more to that previous statement though. He actually welcomed legal immigration, but context matters here. As a young, budding America, fresh off of the American Revolution, the nation needed immigrants to grow its population and strengthen it. Here's where it gets really interesting. He wrote in a 1788 letter that he would welcome, quote, industrious foreigners that sought to improve America. In a 1783 address, he echoed sentiments of assistance for foreign asylum seekers when he said that America had, quote, a door open to the oppressed and needy of all nations. And on the same day, wrote that, quote, the bosom of America is open to receive not only the opulent and respectable stranger, but the oppressed and persecuted of all nations and religions. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but these statements of beneficial foreigners coupled with a heart for asylum seekers sounds like a pretty moderate Democrat in 2025. Depending on how you interpret, What a great time to exercise some nuance though, right? Because it's the most popular founding father talking about America as a refuge state for the oppressed, right? That's language we'd expect from a 2025 Democrat on a campaign trail, not the guy who spent winters at Valley Forge and crossed the Delaware. I know it'd be way more convenient to just say, oh, well, 2025 George Washington would have been a Democrat or a Republican. But these labels just wouldn't make sense if we're being truthful with ourselves. Perhaps we ought to distance ourselves from the two-party system and establish some more nuanced views, like Washington did. Anyway, we also have to remember though, when hearing about Washington's invitation to beneficial foreigners and asylum seekers alike, that this was a country with only a few million people. The flag looked like this, and America, at the time, looked like this. The population was spread thin across the coast, and immigration wasn't some abstract debate about diversity and was far less political. It was a matter of survival instead. You needed more farmers, more blacksmiths, and more soldiers coming into the country. Without fresh labor and new skills, the country would have fallen victim to raids from Native Americans or Great Britain spinning back with more guys. Man, this is about to get dicey. I'm having fun though. If you're enjoying the video so far, drop me a comment down below for the algorithm and like the video. Let's see if we can hit, let's hit 26 likes this time. I know it's not a ton of likes, but it will make your local history dealer smile. Isn't that enough for your like? Thanks for watching as always. Washington was big on culture, as modern day conservatives usually are. Specifically, he feared that allowing immigrants into America in massive numbers ran the serious risk of them refusing to assimilate into American culture. Now, I have a strong opinion on this, but let me know in the comments whether you think American immigrants, whether then or now, have a duty to assimilate into American culture when they arrive in America. They're showing up in America to be Americans and nothing else, right? Anywho's, there's a key racial aspect to Washington's immigration stance that was probably sitting in the back of your mind. He much preferred European immigrants over other ethnic groups, shocking I know. The fear was that those of African, Asian, Arabian, or some other descent would not be able to assimilate as well as those from England, France, and the like, for cultural, racial, and religious reasons. This is stated directly in the Washington administration's Naturalization Act of 1790, which basically gave a path for not just anybody, but quote, free white persons who had lived in the US for at least 2 years and were of quote, good character. This opinion was pretty popular at the time. This was not a, controversial take for the time, obviously. Although there was some criticism of this favoritism from some big names you may recognize, like Thomas Jefferson. For the time, wanting a white colonized nation to remain white isn't connotatively racist by its nature, similar to Italy, Japan, or South Africa when it comes to their immigration opinions. But it certainly echoes racist sentiments, especially when considering the rapidly growing slave population within the early republic, including on Washington's home residence. Of course, George Washington was racist, let's be serious people here. Not to sound like a 2016 PragerU ad or anything, but whether we should judge the figures of the past based on the standards of today is a question for you. But understand that George Washington was a product of his time. To be direct, Had Washington been a product instead of our time, he would have likely been a moderate, likely Republican conservative, advocating for decisive, legal immigration and supporting the border enforcement and the war.
Build that wall, build that wall, build that wall.
But would have been selectively open to asylum seekers and administration of humanitarian aid, with serious concerns though about assimilation. He almost certainly would have hated modern America's ideas of America not as a nation, but as an idea that we've seen lately. Let me know in the comment section if you think George Washington would support ICE tracking down and deporting illegal immigrants. We can say with near certainty that this Washington of our time would have struggled with modern immigration's openness and American society's emphasis on diversity. Beyond that, he'd probably be really confused as to why any red-blooded American citizen would ever go out of their way to demonstrate, whether peacefully or destructively, in defense of people sneaking into the United States. He'd probably say things like, "As long as they bring value to our country, I have no issue," and "If they come here, they ought to speak the language and assimilate to American culture." He would bend to legal, beneficial immigration and never accept the illegal kind. As far as what political party he'd run for office under today, it's hard to say, especially since he was the only person to win the presidency as an independent. He will probably still be an independent today if I had to guess, but probably the kind that gets accused of conservative grifting. It's important to remember that one belief does not necessarily determine your entire political alliance, something that we have a hard time remembering today. George Washington was a product of his time, so we can never really say for certain that he would have believed X or Y in our time, but we can definitely make some reasonable inferences. I know you've heard this product of their time language before. You can criticize Washington for this all you like, but are you not also a product of your time? If you were a late 18th century American colonist, would you have been racist? No? Not even a little bit. If you live comfortably now, odds are you would have had a slave or two back then, regardless of your current political affiliations. Oh, well, good thing times are hard for me now, you say. If you don't live comfortably now, you almost certainly would have wanted some slaves in the largely agrarian society that early America was, as even the most liberal-minded people of the antebellum South were what we would consider absolute mega racists now. What a fun little thought experiment though. Try it on yourself. Would you be the same person morally and politically had you been born in 1780, for example? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching as always.